Just in case anyone is unaware, it was recently announced that we would have 6 new trial decks, one for each nation, released in the near future, and it was also stated that the only cards that would have significant effects would be the Grade 3 and Sentinels. Now, initially, this doesn't seem that concerning, but they also announced that everything in the product would be a common. I'm going to talk a bit more about that later, but the more important thing is we've come to find out that apparently the Grade 3 and Sentinels are the only cards in the product that are going to have effects, or abilities rather. And that is honestly pretty absurd. It's really frustrating that this situation is happening to begin with, but it's also kind of frustrating to talk about. And to explain this, I'm actually going to bring up a tweet from the other day. There was a Yu-Gi-Oh! Hot Takes thread, and Eileen, the person who previously ran the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anons account, had quite a few things to say. One of them, though, was about how Yu-Gi-Oh! Players don't understand sealed product and its relationship with the secondary market. And this is a very common thing across card games as a whole. And I think it's probably one of the biggest issues that exists when it comes to card fight Vanguard products. You are paying around 15, 20 bucks for a deck comprised of a bunch of vanillas aside from specifically the Sentinel and the Vanguard, as far as we know currently anyway, right? And then you're getting a deck box and some sleeves, and it has some promotional packs in it, whatever. Those are bonuses, so I feel like that shouldn't even be counted in the base cost of the deck. By comparison, if you were to pick up some Yu-Gi-Oh starter decks, right, or structure decks rather, they're $10 a piece, and while they for the most part come with one copy of everything in them, you buy 3 copies, and not only do you have a relatively functional deck, you get a couple of staples, and and a couple of the cards actually come in hollow. Hell, actually, we're going to switch to my desk for a second, just so I can prove a point. So previously, the trial decks had a couple of cards in there that you only got 2 copies of. Vanguard being a game where a playset is 4 copies, you'd likely want to get 2 trial decks to have a playset of everything, right? And that would cost you around 30 bucks, hopefully. Now, in the same vein, this is 30 bucks, and while a more rogue strategy in Yu-Gi-Oh! Currently, it's still competitively viable, right? I actually picked these up for a friend, so I'm gonna buy them a third one to replace the one I'm about to open. But we're opening this up because I want to prove a point. In Vanguard products, very frequently you'll have multiple copies of the same card within the product. And despite this, usually only one of them is foil, right? Now, I think that is a bit ridiculous for a product that touts itself as being premium, but very frequently I'll have people who've been playing Vanguard for longer than me say that they're okay with it. This is a prime example of why I'm not okay with it. So, this isn't anything new. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has been like this for a very long time. You buy a starter deck, you got a couple of ultras. In this case, we have 5 ultra rares. You get a couple of supers, 2 tokens. The ratio on these does tend to vary, but all right, we got some core pieces, and the cards that are integral to the deck for the most part are hollow. I could also pull out my Red Dragon Archfiend deck here because a lot of the important pieces there, they also decided to make hollow. But then, we get one of each of the regular Crystal Beasts. We get a Rainbow Dark Dragon, both of the Pendulums. We get Hamon, Dimensional Shifter, which is a staple card. This is a tech choice hand trap. We get Ash Blossom as a staple. We get Ghost Bell as a staple. And then we get a bunch of cards that support the theme that we were buying into, right? This is actually a good card that is sometimes a staple. This is a staple. More Crystal Beast stuff. This has some tech use. This has some use in a variety of different decks, and then we get another token, right? And then we get one of these. This is $10. I get some hollow stuff, just nice looking shiny things that are integral to my deck, some tokens, I get staples and tech cards, and then I get the core, right? So picking up three of these, spending $30 has been so much more value than what I would get out of an equivalent product in Vanguard. If I had Pokemon product here that was sealed, I would open that for a point of comparison as well, but unfortunately I don't. I just think it's genuinely absurd that the quality of product for Vanguard is not only quite low when you look at other games, but even when you look at Vanguard itself, a lot of the products don't tend to make a whole lot of sense. When you look at the trial decks from, I think it was last year, maybe it was longer than that. My memory's a bit, whack right now. The thing that I think is really fucked up is you look at the set that came right after the Youthberg, Drajuled, and Leonorn trial decks. And it immediately rendered the vast majority of cards in those trial decks useless. To me, that is a kind of predatory practice because you have two products in rotation and one of them isn't worth buying objectively because you don't really need too much of anything in the trial decks. Leonorn was the only one that kind of escaped this, where some of the rear guards in there were kind of good, and you also did have a decent amount of reason to run the extra copies of starter deck Leonorn. But that's a terrible situation to be in. And what's a bit crazier is I, quite some time ago, had intended on putting out a video talking about the quality of Vanguard products, and I was going to use the Malevolent Masks gift set as a prime example of this. This was something that got announced, and players were immediately very happy about because the Mask of Hydreigon was very hard to come by at that time and integral for a lot of the new decks that were being released, right? And you look at the product, it comes with a large storage box, a rubber playmat, fighter's coin, going first and second markers, and some card dividers, right? Me looking at this, I expected this product to be like 30, 40 bucks. Because when I look at Pokemon by comparison, right? You know what Pokemon has? Pokemon has these elite trainer boxes. Now, these are listed for much cheaper than they retail for, but they'll go for about 60, 65 bucks. Their prices vary a bit because the contents vary a bit, but you'll get somewhere in between 8 and 11 packs. You'll get a pack of just energy cards, just a bunch of energy cards. You'll get the counters and some die for playing the game, right? And you'll also get some card dividers and stuff here, right? And it's just like that as a $60 product is worthwhile. Like I didn't get the Miradon one, I got the Cardon one, but I bought two of them because the value of the product was actually worth it. So often the value of a Vanguard product is not worth it or barely worth it, or they'll make something occasionally like the Stride deck sets where they're very worth it. But then you can look at this. The Premium Battle deck set. This thing retailed for about 135 bucks where I am, and it ended up costing about 150 with tax. I didn't buy this. And unfortunately, the Night Rose half of it was actually a pretty good value, purely because the Night Rose that got reprinted in this set that you got four copies of was going for about $20 a piece. Just from that, it was very worthwhile to pick this up, at least for people who wanted to play Grand Blue and Premium. However, if you compare precons in other games that are meant to be introductory products, even for a particular format, you can look at Magic with the Commander decks. Those products tend to go for 40 to 50 bucks, and that's at retail, right? Like, of course, a lot of vendors had to mark this product up because they paid so much for it themselves, and that in and of itself is already an issue. That's a pretty consistent issue. And it shouldn't be up to the vendors like 50 cards to do extra to make picking up these products worthwhile for us, the consumer. right? If you're burning, if you're burning your vendors, the game isn't going to last for one thing, but it's also kind of insulting. If you look at the Pale Moon side of the deck, and I'm not actually going to pull a list up, there aren't that many cards that are worth getting, and this actually plays into the thing about people not understanding sealed products and secondary market, right? So there were people who genuinely thought that because Dark Lord Princess got reprinted in this product, that her price would go down. On TCG Player at the time, she was around 15 to 20 bucks. I don't know what her price is currently, but consider this. Dark Lord Princess is a one of in this product that costs 135, and you might get some sellers that'll cut you a deal and sell it for about 120 on TCG Player, and they're selling it at a loss, right? They made a comparison to how Yu-Gi-Oh would frequently reprint cards and drop their prices and stuff like that. So why wouldn't Vanguard do the same thing? If the deck costs $10, right? And let's say of these staple cards, Cyclone on its own cost a dollar, Foolish on its own cost a dollar, Ghost Bell's a dollar, Ash is, let's say, $4, because that's usually how much I would see it go for. And then let's say Shifter's 2, right? So that's 2, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just these 5 cards in the secondary market can potentially hold a value that is very close to the entirety of the deck. Therefore, it's worthwhile potentially for a vendor to buy some amount of this product for the sole purpose of opening it and selling the singles, because even if they sell the rest of these cards at like 20, 30, 40, 50 cents a piece, they're gonna turn a profit, an extra profit, on what they would have gotten for just selling the wholesale product, right? It's a worthwhile endeavor for the vendor, and it also provides a convenience to us, the consumer. You don't have that happening as much with Vanguard, and this is a kind of extreme iteration of that happening in a you just don't have that happen as much in Vanguard because we don't tend to get products that are on the same level as even something like this, which a lot of people would argue that if you're going to pick up any structure deck, you probably grab the Dark World one or the Traptrix one. But there were people that picked this up, they made a control deck, and they ended up topping regionals with this. So this person says, to me, it looks generous in all honesty. Other TCG starter decks are sold at around the same price, if not more. You have to buy at least 2 or 3, and they only come with cards that usually are going to be 75% bad. I don't think this is really the case. One Piece, if you bought the purple starter deck at the game's launch, you pretty much had everything that you needed in that starter deck. You didn't need to pick up a whole lot from the set. The same thing went for Kid, I believe. And I can't comment on the others, but as many card games as I've played, it's very infrequent that I've come across products that are like this. And Vanguard, if anything, would be the main instance that I've seen this be the case. Let's look at what Azim has to say here. Every card in this deck outside of the boss unit and Sentinels is a vanilla card with no effect. Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure decks have really good reprints in them, cards that a good portion of will remain in the deck after upgrading it, and multiple foils, which we already showcased, right? Pokemon has some of the best entry products around with the League battle decks and recently the EX battle decks. I can only speak for these TCGs as I'm also getting into them as well, but compared to them, this is an extremely sad and honestly disappointing product. The other TCGs do not dumb down their cards for beginner players by making them all vanilla, removing effects and almost all skill expression. As a purchasable product worth about half the cost of 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Structure decks or a League Battle deck, you cannot even get a single foil card either. And this is why I brought up the foil thing. Like, I bought the Messiah deck set, and I guess I can switch over to my desk again in a moment to show this. And it was very frustrating to me that while yes, we did get a full foil set of strides, one of the strides out of the 4 was an SP, which I genuinely personally didn't care about. Like if I wanted the SPs, I would have gotten them. The one boon to this is the secondary market is going to have cheap SPs now if I want to upgrade. But then looking at the rest of the deck, you have play sets of cards where one of them is a hollow and then the other three are commons. Why even do that? Right? Like I think about it, I'm like, yo, I pay 35, $36 in Yu-Gi-Oh! To get three structure decks and I get play sets of foils for the cards that are in foil. Why is it different in this game? But getting back to Azim's tweets. Not only that, but you have to hope that you get lucky to pull Elementary Sanctitude, a card that has been out for months and should just be included in the deck at this point. Same with effect triggers, which are also in a blind promo pack in the product as well. And this is like the real big thing. I look at the Stride deck sets and they are a very good product, but I do have one particular thing I would like for them to do as an upgrade. In the future, I think it would be very good if the Stride deck sets just came with effect triggers. They have already printed cards with different art that have a line of text where they are treated as the exact same name as whatever relevant effect trigger. I think doing that with the Stride deck sets would be great because you get to maintain the stylistic identity of whatever theme it is, right? But also give greater access to the effect triggers, which have become such an integral part of deck building. And for decks like this, just including common prints of them, even if it's just like two a piece for, a $15 product would be okay because if you want a playset of cards, normally you'd have to buy two of them anyway. But the current situation is just ridiculous. I honestly thought that this was going to be like a 10-minute video initially, but bro, this genuinely frustrates me to no end. I am very pissed off right now because, like, how is this seen as being okay or as something that is good for the game? It's not only something that's going to be frustrating the players, but it's going to give the game a bad look for people who may be interested in trying to pick it up, right? Because imagine you were to go to a Target, a Walmart, whatever, you didn't know what Card Fight Vanguard was, right? But then you see it and you're like, oh, okay, I'll try it out. And then you open up the product and you have a bunch of vanillas. You have rules talking about all these abilities and stuff, and then you're just like, damn, this seems like one uninteractive ass game if your cards just don't have that many effects or anything like that. This doesn't seem fun. This doesn't seem engaging. This doesn't seem like something I can get engrossed in. Because why? Most of my cards have no effects whatsoever. Now, if this turns out to be wrong, and there are effects on the other cards and there was some misrepresentation, okay, great, fine. But as things currently stand, this is fucking terrible. Why is this trending though? Why is it in video games?